Hey everyone, AmyFalzo. Today we're going to be talking about breast reductions, specifically breast reductions in Australia. So I had a breast reduction done in November of 2019, so it's been just over a year now that I've had my procedure. So I feel like I've kind of gone through a long enough time frame that I can give you a good summary of what happened and what the results are now. There are quite a few good forums and communities to be a part of if you're kind of considering or you have questions. So there's two really good communities I'll recommend to you now that you can join and be a part of. So one is on Reddit, and it's a subreddit called Reduction, so r/reduction. And this is all about breast reductions. Now, there's women on here every day posting their before and after photos, asking questions. It's a very supportive community. The only thing about this subreddit is that it is an international community. So if you're kind of wanting reduction information tailored to your country, it's a bit hard to find that. But if you're just looking for kind of before and afters and just general experience, this is a really, really good forum to join. The other one is an Australian-based forum. Now, this is run by Ariella. She's an influencer on Instagram. You would probably have seen her on your feed at some point. And she actually started this group on Facebook, and it's called SLB Angels. And now only females can join this Facebook group, and it's full of, there are a few international, but it's mainly Australian-based women who are talking about a whole range of things. It's not just breast reduction, but I find I'm part of the community, and I find it is very heavily breast reduction based. So I think that's really handy if you're looking for Australian-based information. So I implore you to check either of those communities out if you're kind of on the fence about having the surgery done. Okay, so the first question we're going to cover today is, how do you go about getting a breast reduction? My first advice for you is to go and see a GP. The reason for this is because with some surgeons, if you see a GP beforehand and get a referral from them, they will take a couple $1,000s off your surgery fee or your overall fee because you were referred from a GP in the beginning. Now, there's basically two ways you can go about getting a breast reduction. That is either through the public or the private health system. There is a way to go through the public health system. However, the wait time is horrendous. So if you are serious and you actually want a breast reduction, my best advice is just go straight through to the private system. Because when I spoke to my GP about possibly going through Medicare and doing it in a public hospital, she said it's about a 2 to 3 year wait on having a breast reduction done through the public system. So my honest advice is it's probably better to just go through the private health system for this kind of surgery. So I went to my GP and I just told her, look, I'm really considering a breast reduction. I've considered it for many years now. I think my breasts are just too big for my body, and they're causing back pain, and I can't fit into the clothes I want. Now, I was a F cup. I was wearing an Australian F cup, so 12F. However, one of my breasts was bigger than the other. So my left breast was bigger than my right. And even though I was wearing an F cup bra, my left was actually overspilling in the F cup. So sorry, my cat's here. I actually think I was wearing too small of a bra size, but I didn't want to go any bigger. I was ashamed of buying a bigger bra than an F. I would rather walk around in discomfort because I didn't want to go up a size. So I basically told my GP and my surgeon I'm wearing an F cup, but realistically I think I would be probably more like a G or a H on this side. Anyway, so my GP was very easy about it. She didn't even look, she didn't even ask me to take my t-shirt off or anything, but just be aware that some of them may ask you to do that, so you might want to just be wearing something that's easy to take off. She basically was just asking me if it causes me discomfort, which it was, and she could clearly see just looking at me how big they were, so she wrote me a referral. And she also gave me a list of about 5 or 6 surgeons who do breast reductions. Now, the other thing as well is some surgeons actually do require you to get a GP referral, so not all of them, but yeah, some practices you actually need a written referral to even get a consult with them. So the next stage of going about it is finding a surgeon that you're interested in. Now, be wary that most surgeons charge a consult fee. So if you want to go and see 3 different surgeons, that's fine and it's your choice, but they're most likely going to charge you up to $300 per visit. Yeah, just try and look into them as much as you can, and their before and afters. They always have before and afters on their website. So just kind of try and gauge that as much as you can before you make your consult. I just went to one doctor. I really liked his before and after work, and he was close by, so I went straight to him, and he did charge me a $300 consult fee to go and see him, but that would be put towards my surgery if I chose to go with him. So that's kind of not too bad in the long run if you do choose to go with them. In the consult, I basically gave them my GP referral letter and I spoke to the surgeon. He asked me what size I wanted to be. I told him a D cup. I actually regret, and we will touch on this later, not asking for smaller because I still feel like my breasts are too big for my body, but we're going to touch on that later in the body dysmorphia section. The surgeon, he or she will ask you to undress fully so that they can take a look. My surgeon particularly noticed straight away that my left breast was bigger than my right, so he said he can fix that easily. So they'll just take a quick look. They normally feel as well, and then they just write down what you're kind of looking for, what size you want to go to, what you're already wearing, and any like prior medical history, things like that. So it was a pretty quick consult, and honestly things kind of moved along very quickly from that point. So this takes us to the next question, which is how much did this surgery cost me? So what I paid straight up, the final fee was about $21,000. Or $21,200 if I'm going to be more exact. Basically, to break that up, it was $15,000 for the surgery, so that's what my surgeon quoted me for the procedure. It was $1,200 for the anesthetic, which actually was a sneaky after cost. My surgeon didn't tell me about having to pay for anesthetic at all. Like, he didn't put it even in his kind of quote. I don't know, this was my first surgery, so maybe I'm just dumb and I don't know how surgeries work when quoting prices, but I personally thought that at least on his quote he would say anesthetic subject to the anesthetist's pricing, so at least I would kind of know I have to at least have the money for that extra cost. But there was nothing. That was a sneaky cost. And then I paid $5,000 for my hospital stay. Now, I do not have private health insurance. If you have private health insurance at a level where if you go to hospital, your hospital stay will be covered, then you would not be paying that $5,000. So realistically, you would then be down to about $16,000 for the entire cost. Now, looking back, the quote that I got for the actual surgery, which was $15,000, is quite high. I've had friends who have had this same procedure done and they were not quoted that amount of money. They were quoted quite a bit less, more like around $10,000. So this is where it comes back to how many consults you want to go through, because you probably can get a better price if you're talking to multiple surgeons in the beginning. Okay, so let's talk about the procedure. So the day of the surgery, I went to hospital at like 6 in the morning. I was the first surgery of the day. My boyfriend took me there. I got changed into a gown, and the nurses are asking you a bunch of questions, and they ask you to repeat what surgery you're getting about 100 times, and you have to keep saying, yep, I'm getting a bilateral breast reduction, just so that they know that you know what you're getting and you're not walking into a surgery that is not meant for you. Then they took me in to the operating room, like the little waiting room just outside the operating theatre, and my anaesthetist came in and she just kind of spoke me through what was happening. We had a chat on the phone before, so we had a quick chat, and honestly my biggest concern with the anesthetic was that I was going to have bad nausea from it. I'm not so bad anymore, but at the time I had a real fear of throwing up, anything to do with vomit. So I was just, I was more scared for that than the actual surgery itself. Anyway, she kind of calmed me down and just said, look, if it does happen when you wake up, we just prescribe you some medicine, which should stop the nausea anyway. It does happen to some people, but it's not that common. So, it's more likely that you will be fine. And she basically put a cannula in my hand, and then she joined the operating theatre. So then my surgeon came into the little waiting room and he drew me up. He also reconfirmed what size I wanted to be. Again, this was another opportunity for me to say I wanted to go smaller, but I had said D. And yeah, then we basically went into the operating theatre. I remember They didn't put anything over my mouth. She just put the anesthetic straight into my cannula and I was out like a light, baby. So when I woke up from surgery, I was on oxygen for about 10 minutes and then they took me to my room. Now, remember I said I paid $5,000 for this hospital stay. Now, I didn't even end up staying overnight for this hospital stay. It was a day visit because my surgery was done so early in the morning, and my doctor, my surgeon, ended up saying that I was fit to go home. So I paid $5,000 and I did not even stay overnight, and they didn't even give me a private room. So anyway, they took me to my room and then they called my boyfriend, so he came and joined me. They kept giving me little snacks and meals and I tried to eat it the best I could, but for some reason they gave me a vegetarian dinner, which was mushroom risotto, and I absolutely hate mushroom. I could not eat a bite of that meal. It was disgusting, but I ate as much snacks as I could. My surgeon did come and take a look at me after a couple hours. So he basically told me that he took 650 grams out of my left breast and 350 out of my right. Now I remember thinking like 650, that's great, but 350 grams, like, I don't know, I was kind of expecting more than that. And when I first woke up and could, feel my breasts, I remember thinking they feel the same. They don't feel smaller. The thing is, they tell you it's swelling, there's really bad swelling, so it's kind of hard to tell now, but once the swelling goes down, don't worry, you'll be happy, okay? Alright, I'm trusting the system, alright? I'm trusting the system. Anyway, he says I'm fine to be discharged after a couple hours. The nurses are coming around, they come around every half an hour and they take your blood pressure. My blood pressure was always fine. Then they came around to discharge me, and so I signed the papers, I said I'm good to go, I got dressed. And I got up and I went with my boyfriend to the nurse's desk to hand the discharge papers in. And as we were standing at the desk, I started to feel so lightheaded. I just remember the room started kind of spinning on me, and I felt both sick, like really, really nauseous, like I was about to just be sick. And I also felt like I was about to just hit the ground, like I was gonna pass out. So while this nurse is talking to me, I suddenly said to my boyfriend, I think I need to sit down somewhere. And anyway, I just kind of ran to the closest room that had a chair in it. And then suddenly, everyone's all over me, and the nurses were quite panicked because I had signed the discharge papers and now suddenly I was almost on the floor. But what had happened is, because I had been lying down for so long in my bed at the hospital, and then I'd gotten up so suddenly, my blood pressure had just dropped really, really low. So they basically said, yeah, just sit there for a while, have some water, and they actually took me back to the bed. So I was discharged, but they ended up taking me back to the bed to stay there for another hour and a half around just to monitor me. And then they ended up getting me a porter to take me down to my boyfriend's car, because they said, oh, just to be safe, you shouldn't walk down, we'll get you a wheelchair. So they wheelchaired me down to my boyfriend's car, and then I went home and it was like nothing happened. It was the weirdest thing. Okay, so let's talk about the immediate post-op. I was prescribed endone by the hospital. I actually did not end up taking endone at all. I still have the packet just sitting on one of my bedside tables, but I pretty much just stuck with Panadol and Nurofen, but I don't even really remember taking them that much. I remember that there wasn't really much pain. Now, it's important to note that I didn't have drains put in, and I know these days it's about half-half whether surgeons use drains or not. Yeah, I don't know, I just didn't find there was much pain in the immediate week after surgery. The worst kind of pain is when you're kind of moving, you're twisting side to side. That kind of pain is, it pulls at the skin that's been stitched up, so that is quite painful. But in terms of the actual breasts themselves, not really that much pain, so it was genuinely pretty good. I went back to work quite quickly. I don't know, I was able to go to work with the compression vest on that they gave me, so it was quite handy to be able to go back to work quite quickly. I do think that's tailored to an individual. You may or may not be able to go back as quick as I did. So now we're going to quickly talk about post-op, about 1 to 4 months. Basically, the biggest thing I found with this is I had two problems. One was when my surgeon, when I went to one of the follow-up appointments, he took my tape off because they put surgery tape over the incision sites. And when he took the tape off, one of the cuts, which is kind of down from the nipple, that was still open when he took the tape off. So there was basically an open wound on both sides just under the nipple. Now I had a free nipple graft, which is where they fully cut out your nipple and then move it entirely. And he kind of just said, look, you just put bandages over it, and just keep changing the bandages as much as you can, and it should just close up. Well, it didn't really do that as quickly as I wanted it to, and it was starting to concern me, and it was grossing me out. Honestly, it was the kind of thing to look at that you just felt sick looking at it. So I went to a GP. Basically, they took a look at it, and they said because of the area the cut is in, it doesn't get much blood supply, that wound area, so it takes a lot longer for it to heal. So they basically booked me in for a couple of appointments throughout that week, and I think the week after, and they would just change the bandages every time and just make sure they were doing it correctly. That's probably the worst scarring I have. So scarring like down and under is almost like it's there, but it's very, very, you just can't see it that much. It's not noticeable, it's faded a lot. But just under the nipple where those wounds were, that's still quite visible scarring because it took so long to heal. The other problem I had is where the incisions were, it was so itchy, and this lasted for months, I reckon. Itchy. And they say itchy is a good sign because it kind of means it's healing. The best thing to do really is to go and buy an antihistamine. As soon as I took antihistamines, I was fine, I was sweet. It would last me for half the day, say, and the itching would go away. So I basically was just on antihistamines for a while. Now, lastly, before I move on, I just want to say that 1 to 4 or even 1 to 6 months post-op, your breasts are really perky. So when you get a reduction, they kind of lift them as well, and because they're fresh out of surgery, they sit quite high, and they're little because they're sitting up, but the reality is that they drop at some point. So for the first few months, when I tell you I was like a new person, I would go to work and like my breasts wouldn't move. It was like kind of like plastic surgery. Like they wouldn't move, you know, they wouldn't jiggle. It was amazing. You know, I could go out braless, literally in like a dress with just thin straps. But then the reality hits in, and once you kind of hit 6 months to a year, they drop. You know, gravity does its work and they drop. And this is where I actually started to have really bad regrets and dysmorphia about what size I chose to go to. And I just kind of felt like I spent all this money for something I'm not completely happy with. Let's touch on dysmorphia. So body dysmorphia is quite a big after effect of getting a breast reduction surgery. So even though, you know, you have gone considerably smaller, most people find that they still view them as big and they're quite unhappy, they have regrets. And honestly, I deal with that still to this day. So I told you guys that when I woke up straight from surgery, I remember thinking my breasts are still too big. My doctors said, look, they're just swollen, they already look smaller, and once they de-swell, you'll be fine. It does take a little while for the breast to fully lose their swelling. My surgeon said up to 6 months. But the thing is I was too afraid to speak up. So I would go to my post-op follow-ups with my surgeon in his office, and every time he would see me, he would say, how do you feel about the size? You happy with the size? And I would just go, yep, I'm happy. And the reality was I was not happy. I had asked my surgeon to make me a D cup, right? I'm measuring now at a double D. And depending on the brand of bra I buy, that is probably too small. Even a double D is probably too small in some of the brands. So day to day I wear bras and things, and I wear a double D in them. But yeah, if I go to a different brand, double D will be too small. And that is quite disheartening because you just think you pay all this money and you kind of want the results that you want, right? And it's bittersweet. You're happy with the results, but you're also not happy. Like, already my breasts are a million times better than what they were before. But would I go out in clothing without a bra on, which is kind of half the reason I wanted the surgery? Not really. Maybe it's to do with the fact that I have lived most of my adult life having to wear a bra every day, so I feel like it's weird to go out without one. But I find most of the clothes, like dresses with thin straps or singlets or whatever, I can't wear no bra. Like, my breast is still too big for that, and they droop, like, you know, not as much as my old ones, but they still droop enough that you'd be like, honey, you need to wear a bra with that. Came back to work and I just was kind of half expecting people to come up to me and be like, wow, what's changed about you? You know, have you lost weight, or is something different, because you look like something's different about you? And no one said a single thing. Even my mum, like she always looks at me when I'm wearing clothes and says, oh, you know, like, I think that you've got really nice sized breasts now. Like, they look a lot better now, whereas before they were like clearly just too big for your proportions. But like now I look at you and I don't think anything, because they just look normal, like, to your body. But yeah, I mean, if I could reverse time, I probably would have made it more clear pre-operation that I wanted to go like as small as possible, because yeah, I don't know, I think it's a bit to do with the trend at the moment. I think the kind of style trend of 2021 is small boobs are in. You know, all the dresses and singlets and backless tops and stuff that people wear, like, they're all very small boob fashion. I must say, like, if you are having dysmorphia kind of thoughts, you know, I would say talk to a medical professional, you know, even your GP, or go back to your surgeon. Like, honestly, don't do what I did. I went to every consult and my surgeon literally asked me to my face, are you happy with the size? And I would lie and say, yep, I'm happy, because I just wanted to get out of there. I just didn't want to be there. Tell them that you think it's too big, because, you know, there's always the possibility of revision surgery. Kind of depends how serious you are about getting those results you want. This is just really my experience. I find that most of my friends and friends of friends that I know that have had this surgery are like happy. They're so happy with the results. But I have noticed that they've gone a lot smaller than I have. Like, their after was a lot smaller results than what I got. So that's probably why they are a lot happier than what I am with my results. But it is important to remember that there is actually only a certain amount of size they can take you down safely. So if you have really, really big breasts, it gets to a level where it's not safe for them to take you down too much in one go, because of, you know, there can be loss of blood supply to the nipple, like all of those kind of things. You have a much higher chance when you go down like a considerable amount of sizes. That's all I can say. At the end of the day, I am really happy with my results, and I'm also kind of wish I had better results in a way. That's all I can truthfully say, if I'm being honest. Okay, let's quickly talk about breastfeeding, the possibility of breastfeeding as well. So I think for a lot of people that want this surgery, this is a considerable factor. I've always thought, when the time comes, you know, I'm more than happy to formula feed if I'm not able to breastfeed, because I don't know, I just feel like for my mental happiness, physical happiness, you know, to get the reduction, you know, it's important for me to like the way I look and feel, compared to down the road, you know, like being able to breastfeed. That's just kind of the way I thought. If you think differently, well, that's on you, but that's just always what I figured. So my surgeon did touch on it. Normally in the first consult that you see the surgeon, they will talk to you about this. They just say, do you plan to have kids in the future or one day, and how do you feel about not being able to breastfeed? Now, I told my surgeon, personally, I don't really mind if I can't breastfeed. Like, if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. He said that, you know, you never know. The longer you kind of wait after having the operation done to when you have kids, the better chance there is that possibly you will be able to breastfeed, because your body's had so much time to kind of repair itself. However, he said we can never really tell. Like, he said it's either, you know, it will work for you or it won't. So yeah, like I said, I was kind of happy. Like, I don't really mind either way if I am able to or not. Maybe that will change. Like, maybe when I, you know, have my own child, I can imagine I probably will feel guilty if I'm not able to breastfeed, even though I made that decision. It just wasn't a big enough concern for me. I'm purely just a fed baby is the best baby, or whatever the saying is. It wasn't a big enough factor to turn me off getting this surgery that I wanted for such a long time. But yeah, I think if breastfeeding is important to you, or perhaps you're close to trying for a baby, then you need to kind of consider this surgery, because there is a good likelihood that you will not be able to breastfeed after having this surgery done. Really, really want to be able to breastfeed, I would talk to your doctor or your surgeon about this, because they will most likely recommend you wait until you've had all your children and then you get the reduction done, which, you know, is obviously an option. So you just got to kind of weigh it up in your own, you know, personal time frame, how much it matters to you if you're able to do it or not, and how close you are to possibly starting a family, that can be a big factor in whether you should get it now or hold out. So guys, I think I've touched on everything that I can think of. I'm sure I've left some things out, but feel free to leave a comment, or you can message me on any of my socials. I hope I was informative enough and didn't ramble too much. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.